Anbernic has released the RG34XX SP, and in many ways, this scratches a lot of my nostalgic itches for me personally. If you're looking into getting something like this will feel right at home if you had a Game Boy Advance SP when you were growing up. I did not, so I don't really have that much nostalgia towards it. What I do have is a tad bit of jealousy and saltiness towards people that could afford it when they were growing up. My parents, they couldn't, so they just got me a Game Boy Advance and they called it a day, which is why the Game Boy Advance became one of my favorite handhelds to date. The RG34XX that came out 6 months ago was just amazing for me personally, but this is just a step above. Although the internals are very similar to other XX products that are out there, there are some unique differences that are here. And it's not necessarily that the differences are more tied towards the internal specs, but more because of the flavor that it comes in, if you catch my drift. This just feels great in the hands, and the overall experience that I've had with this has been phenomenal. But we've had the RG35XX SP, so it makes me wonder, why does this even exist? But let's be real, guys. It's Anbernic. Of course, they're going to go ahead and release another XX product with similar internals, if not exactly the same, in a different form factor. Now, I'll be honest with you. This is definitely awesome. I love the clamshell style. This is something that I could see myself taking with me whenever I'm traveling. In fact, I'm taking it with me right now. I'm in the middle of traveling for work. So this is something that just feels right at home. And you know what they say? The best handheld is the one that you have with you, and this is one that I could see myself having all the time. Last year, I bought myself the RG35XX SP from AliExpress through Anbernic's official store over there, and that is who's actually sponsoring today's video. This video is sponsored by AliExpress. This is the Anbernic RG35XX SP, and when it comes down to it, it has scratched so many nostalgic itches when it comes to playing retro titles. I've had this for a little bit over a year, but AliExpress wanted me to go ahead and talk about a handheld that I really like in this ad slot, and this has got to be it. You can find this on AliExpress, which is where I ordered it, alongside with plenty of other knickknacks, accessories, SD cards, USB cables that you would want in order to support something like this. Now, when you do buy this, it does come with a USB-A to USB-C cable, a couple of screen wipes, and also a screen protector. I do want to go ahead and mention that my unit came with an SD card that was jam-packed with games. Your unit might or might not, depending on which configuration it is that you purchase. But the cool thing that I do like about this is that it's part of the XX line. So there are plenty of features that are jam-packed into this that you're already familiar with. The Allwinner H700 CPU, the Mali G31 MP2 GPU, as well as the 1 GB of LPDDR4 RAM. And I know 1 GB might not sound like a lot for people that aren't familiar with the XX line, but it's more than enough to play some of the retro titles that you're going to be playing on this handheld. The battery lasts anywhere between 6 to 8 hours, depending on the games that you're going to be playing. And just overall, it's a beautiful and amazing experience. Now, if you want to install custom firmware on here, you can definitely do that. But aside from that, plenty of the accessories and utilities and things that you want to go ahead and get in order to support owning a handheld like this can all be found through AliExpress. I suggest following the link down in the description below, as well as the pinned comment, and using some of the discount codes that I have down there. They're first come, first serve, but go ahead and use them in order to buy an RG35XX SP or any of the other products on AliExpress's website. And thanks to AliExpress for sponsoring this video. All right, now that some bills have been paid, we can go ahead and talk a little bit more about what you can find in here. Now, this is going to come with the same Allwinner H700 CPU that you could find on the other XX products that are there, and also the same GPU. We're talking about the Mali G31 MP2. But the biggest factor that I have seen on here is that there is an extra gigabyte of RAM. Does it impact game performance? Not really based off of what I've seen, but it is a nice to have. It probably helps with the whole OS experience that you could get when you're actually going and perusing through the games that are there. But regardless of that, this is going to come with a 3300 milliamp hour battery, which means you're going to get around 4 to about 5.5-ish hours of battery life. And the cool thing is that there's plenty of connectivity that is here. You have 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi and Bluetooth 4.2, as well as a mini HDMI and 3.5 millimeter jack. At the time of this recording, in terms of availability, I haven't found anything on AliExpress's store, or at least Anbernic's official store on AliExpress for listing these. Once I find it, I will go ahead and update the links in the description as well as the pinned comment. But when it comes down to it, on Anbernic's official website, I did find it for $66.99. Now, this does come in 4 different colors. Technically, you have the SNES gray, which is similar to the one that I have over here, but it also comes in black, indigo, which is akin towards the GameCube, and then also yellow, which is what I personally wish that I'd gotten for my review unit. But the yellow one is much more akin towards that Pikachu style that we saw back in the day. I also did get it with this faux leather case that it came with, which is pretty nice for traveling with. It also came with a USB-C to USB-A cable, a couple of thumbstick knob or covers to go ahead and protect the joysticks that are there, as well as some wipes to prep the screen for an also included screen protector. Now, the micro SD card that I did get in here is blue, similar to a Kioxia micro SD card, which is actually technically a subsidiary of Toshiba, so it is a high quality card, but this one isn't that. I went ahead and tried to Google the numbers that I found on the back, but I wasn't able to find anyone. I'll go ahead and I'll list them up over here. That way you can go ahead and see if you can find it online. But when it comes out to it, I couldn't find anything at all. On the left-hand side of the SP, you're going to have a volume rocker as well as an SD card slot. Now, this is technically your SD card slot 1. If you did buy this with an SD card already included with games, then this is where you would find it, or this is where you would put it in. On the bottom, you're going to have a 3.5 millimeter jack, and on the right-hand side, you're going to get your power button as well as a restart button, and that's where your second SD card slot will go. If you go ahead and open up the unit, you're going to be greeted with that 3.4-inch screen, and then there's your menu button as well as your face buttons, your D-pad, as well as analog sticks, and you also have your start and select button. If you look on the back side, you also have your triggers that are here, as well as on the top a USB/OTG port and a mini HDMI port. One thing that I did notice on here that is different from the RG35XX SP is the fact that there isn't actually a removable part to actually remove the battery that is there. In order to remove that, you actually have to take off the entirety of the back shell, which kind of sucks, but you know, it is what it is. I understand that they're trying to make things much smaller and easier and compact when it comes down to these things. Layout aside, this is very comfortable to actually play on. Now, obviously, this takes a homage from the original SP, but the layout is definitely there. The one thing that I don't like about it, which is very similar to, well, any vertical style handheld or clamshell that has analog sticks all the way down there, is that it feels out of place. It feels imbalanced. And that's something that just kind of, I don't know, it's not comfortable for me to play with analog sticks down there. Do I understand why it's there? Yes, of course. You want to be able to have that functionality when you're talking about N64 games, Dreamcast, as well as PlayStation. It's much easier to have that already installed and not having to like worry about remapping specific analog sticks onto specific D-pads or whatever it may be. It's just easier that way to have the hardware already ready for emulation. At the end of the day, though, I rarely use it anyways. This is going to be an 8-bit, 16-bit, and even 32-bit monster when it comes to playing games. And like I said earlier, I'm going to be focusing more on the Game Boy Advance side of things more than anything else. Now, with all of that being said and done, the D-pad is absolutely fantastic. When I was playing Tekken 3, I didn't have any sort of misinputs unless they were user error because, you know, I haven't played it in quite some time. But the face buttons were clicky, responsive. The triggers felt really nice. I do love the placement that is there because it just feels very natural to have my finger there to begin with. When it comes to the start and select buttons, they're there, and the menu button is also there as well. But again, the analog sticks, they leave a lot to be desired, but it's not, you know, the fault of the design. It's just that I don't really care for them. Now, one of the biggest problems with this handheld that I've seen a lot of people talk about is the fact that the forehead or the bezel around this screen is absolutely humongous, especially the top portion that's there. Now, for me personally, it does not bother me, but I do wish that the screen was much more centered, if that makes any sense. If they would have taken that top bezel, or I almost called it a forehead, that top bezel that's there, divided in half, put half of it on the bottom and half of it on top, just so that things would be much more centralized. I am a sucker for symmetry when it comes to design or anything overall. Like whenever I edit photo and video, I like things being symmetrical because it's just much more pleasing to my eye. And this would have definitely benefited from that. It's just, I don't know. I wish that they would have taken that into account. Now, I do know that there are some people that have taken it apart just to kind of like see what's inside. But for me personally, it's okay. It's not bad at all. And because of the aspect ratio that's there, it's perfect for emulating Game Boy Advance games, which is, like I said, my bread and butter. One thing that I do want to go ahead and say is that when it comes to charging these devices, most of the time people are saying or recommending that you use a cell phone charger of some kind, a low wattage cell phone charger. That way you can go ahead and charge it and not have to worry about any sort of issues popping up with the battery. I do want to let you know that although I was able to connect a Steam Deck 65-watt charger to charge the RG34XX SP, I do not recommend that you do it. I would still recommend that you use the included cable alongside with a low power or low wattage charging brick for a cell phone in order to charge your handheld. It's just a much safer and better route in the grand scheme of things. Although there are some custom firmwares that are out there that technically are operational with the 8700 all-winter processor, I didn't get a chance to actually use any on this handheld. The stock software that it does come with is actually pretty solid. It's not bad at all. The one thing that I don't like about it is that, it's kind of something that needs to be updated via downloading the firmware, flashing it onto the card, and just getting everything up and running that way. This might not be something that most people that aren't necessarily tech savvy would want to go ahead and go for anyways. I wish that Anbernic would just have a way of actually updating things through the software itself, where you find a spot in the menu where you click update and it will grab the update from their server as long as you're connected over Wi-Fi, and it'll update everything for you and it'll get everything nice and hunky-dory and set up for you. Aside from that, I do like the fact that it's there. A lot of the different ways that games run through RA games, they just run great. Sometimes the best settings are right there. There's very little tweaking that I've needed to do, that I've needed to have done. The one thing that I did need to go ahead and correct was when I was playing on PPSSPP, I needed to actually get the aspect ratio set up because the way that it was stretched out just wasn't good at all. And in order to do that, all you have to do is just go into the settings, turn full screen off, and then that'll pretty much go ahead and fix it for you. If you do need to go ahead and make sure that things are rendering properly, then you can actually make sure that the PSP resolution isn't set to auto, but it's set to 1x. That way things just run nice and smooth. But even still, did have some issues when it came to performance of PSP games. So let's just talk about the performance issues that I ran into. When we're talking about 8-bit and 16-bit titles, you have nothing to worry about. Even the 32-bit Game Boy Advance, that runs perfectly fine on this handheld. It's really when you talk about 32-bit 3D titles, I'm talking about PlayStation 1 and 64 and Dreamcast and PSP. I mean, specifically PSP, that's 3D. PSP 2D is fine. We're Mega Man X Maverick Hunter, like that's fine. But when we're talking about, God of War, for instance, you're going to run into some performance dips. I also want to go ahead and mention that when I was playing PlayStation 1 titles, most of them that were on here ran just fine. I'm talking about Tekken 3, Dino Crisis 2, so on and so forth. And when I was playing Virtua Tennis, I believe it is, on a Dreamcast, that ran fine as well. There were a couple of dips from time to time, but it is what it is. Same thing with Wave Racer on N64. While I was playing the game, I did notice that it starts off at 60 FPS, but quickly dips down into the 50s. And, obviously I would like to have, a 60 FPS experience. But at the end of the day, we're talking about the all-winner 8700. We all know what this processor can do. So there are plenty of, YouTubers as well as myself. I've done a lot of research and, content around this processor and the XX line. You can see what this thing can do, and we all know what it can do. I think the biggest selling point with this is the form factor, not necessarily the difference in performance because of that 1 GB of additional RAM. But I would be remiss to not compare the RG34XX SP to the Miyoo Flip. Now, this is the V1. I never got my hands on the V2, but it looks like Anbernic essentially took everything that was good about the Miyoo Flip and put it into the 34XX SP. It's just, and understandably so. I get it. The form factor, the ideology behind it, and the overall design is just really, really good. And I do like that about the Miyoo Flip. There aren't too many differences. Well, there are a couple of things that are there. And I'm not going to do a deep dive in this video. I might save that for a comparison video, kind of how I did with the RG35XX and the Miyoo Mini Plus. But when it comes down to it, this definitely, the hinge that is here allows for much more specific angles that are there. They kind of just snap into those positions. And then after that, it kind of leaves you in the foray. Whereas this one just snaps into this specific angle, and everything else that is there is kind of up to you, but it's never really 100% snapped into place, kind of how it is here. here. Obviously, there are different operating systems that are here and different internals as well, but it seems like overall it's so similar in size. Like I could see that the Anbernic is slightly bigger than the Miyoo Flip V1, but overall it's so similar in terms of button layouts. I mean, everything in even the IO is on point. It's crazy to me. But yeah, no, I think that, Anbernic, they took what made the Miyoo Flip and they kind of just made it their own in a sense. They kind of polished it a little bit. They took what was good about the RG35XX SP and also polished that as well. Overall, this seems like a really good handheld. I really do think that it is worth it, especially if you're considering getting something like this. Because I travel a lot, I do look for different ways to kind of just shove in gaming time whenever I'm flying or on a train or whatever it may be, just to kind of like squeeze in some time and also kill some time as well, especially when I'm not going to be doing anything super crazy and I don't have any crazy work that I need to do on the run. And this feels like it would be my go-to handheld for quite some time. The RG35XX SP was that for 2024 for me. This might be it for 2025. So far, I am very, very impressed with what this thing can do. And as far as I can tell, the RG35XX Pro was just announced on Anbernic, so I'm excited to see that as well. At the end of the day, I love these little things. They just let me ooze and live in nostalgia. But what do you guys think of the RG34XX SP? Is this something that you're going to be interested in? Do you want to hear more about it? I'm very curious to see how the custom firmware is going to run on these things. Again, at the time of this recording, I haven't had a chance to actually test anything out. But if you want to hear my thoughts on the original RG34XX, then click this video over here. And if you want to hear my thoughts on Windows versus Steam OS on the Asus ROG Ally, then click this video over here. And until next time, guys, I will see you on the next one. Peace.